What are some of the differences between the feeding of the 5,000 and the feeding of the 4,000? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Mark on Walking Through the Bible.
The glory of His cross.
If you have a Bible with you, turn to Mark chapter 8. We're going to be reading from verses 1 to 10. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Mark chapter 8, beginning at verse 1. In those days, the multitude being very great and having nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples to him and said to them, I have compassion on the multitude, because they have now continued with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away hungry to their own houses, they will faint on the way, for some of them have come from afar. Then his disciples answered him, How can one satisfy these people with bread here in the wilderness? He asked them, How many loaves do you have? And they said, 7. So he commanded the multitudes to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves and gave thanks, broke them, and gave them to his disciples to set before them. And they set them before the multitude. They also had a few small fish. And having blessed them, he set them before them also. So they ate and were filled, and they took up 7 large baskets of leftover fragments. Now those who had eaten were about 4,000. And he sent them away, immediately got into the boat with his disciples, and came to the region of Dalmanutha. With there being a chapter break between the healings that occurred at the end of chapter 7 and this miracle here in chapter 8, it could appear as if they are 2 different stories. However, from our study of Matthew, we know that these 2 stories are actually linked. It can be easy, though, to assume that when Jesus performed miracles, that he did so in a couple of hours and moved on. Such is usually not the case, however, for in today's reading we find that Jesus was healing people for 3 days and most likely also teaching them, though the passage does not say that specifically. That would obviously tell us that there were a lot of people. The exact number we'll discuss in a few moments. Now after these 3 days, Jesus looked out on the multitude and had compassion on them, for they had been with him and now had no food. For sure, they may have had some food when they arrived, but probably hadn't anticipated on staying with Jesus for 3 days, so if they did have some food, it would have been gone by now. Jesus, not wanting to send them away hungry lest they faint on the way, decided that he would feed them. The disciples wondered where they would get enough bread in the wilderness to feed such a great multitude. Jesus asked them how many loaves they had, to which they responded that they had 7 loaves and a few little fish. That would be enough for Jesus, for he had the multitude sit down, gave thanks for the food, and then had the disciples go out and feed the people. Everybody ate to their fill, and they took up 7 large baskets full in the end. The number of people who ate were 4,000 men. Matthew would tell us that the number was besides women and children, which, if you counted them, meant that most likely there would have been between 8,000 and 12,000 people who ate. Now, if you've been watching this podcast regularly, this story should sound familiar, for it is strikingly similar to the story we read of in Mark 6, verses 30 and 44. In fact, these 2 stories are so similar that some people discount that Jesus performed this miracle twice, concluding that Jesus only did this miracle once, but it was recorded for us twice. Such an objection is absurd, for why would Matthew and Mark, the only 2 Gospels who record both miracles, both duplicate the same miracle in a matter of chapters? Certainly the readers of that time would have noticed it and questioned the authenticity of one of these accounts if they were in fact a duplicate. But even more to the point, even though these miracles are strikingly similar, they are in fact different. For one, the multitude in chapter 6 totaled 5,000 men, while the miracle here in chapter 8 totaled 4,000 men. This might not be significant to some, but it does tell us that this was 2 different miracles. In chapter 6, there were 5 loaves and 2 fish, while in chapter 8, there were 7 loaves and a few little fish. In chapter 6, 12 baskets of fragrance were taken up afterwards, while in chapter 8, there were 7 large baskets taken up. If such was a duplicate miracle, some of these details would have been the same, with perhaps only one detail being different. They were, however, 2 different miracles occurring at 2 different times, even though the miracle itself, the feeding of a large crowd with but a little food, was the same. The disciples had obviously forgotten of the first miracle, and so, along with having compassion on the people, Jesus used this as a teaching opportunity for his disciples. After the miracle, Jesus sent away the multitude, and him and the disciples crossed over the Sea of Galilee again to the western side, and came to the region of Dalmanutha. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Mark chapter 8, verses 11 to 21, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.